would like to invite Dr. Namrata Sharma, who is another young, dynamic secretary of the AIOS. So she's going to be talking to us about iatrogenic ectasia and how you manage iatrogenic ectasia. Dr. Namrata Sharma.
Thank you, Praveen, and thank you for being so kind. You're calling every speaker young. So, thank you. I would be talking to you about iatrogenic ectasia, how to manage it, and I would like to thank Chitra and team ARC for this. So, it can occur after refractive surgery, which we are talking about. So, it can occur after PRK, LASIK, and SMILE, both, all three of them. It occurs more often after LASIK as compared to SMILE and PRK, as has been reported in literature. And basically, biomechanical corneal changes are associated with decrease in the UDVA, steepening, and thinning of the cornea. And there are several criteria by which it is diagnosed, but if there's loss of best corrected visual acuity with refractive change of more than 2 diopters of spherical equivalent, topographic corneal steepening or torosity of more than 1.5, and central steepening, then we diagnose post-LASIK ectasia. The incidence in the recent times have reduced from zero point 0.6 to 0.033%, and 50% occur in the first year, 80% occur in the second year. And as was also emphasized by Dr. Gaurav Luthra, it can occur as early as 1 week after LASIK or even can be delayed up to several years after the initial procedure. There are absolute risk factors such as the form first keratoconus and PMDs, and relative risk factor such as low residual bed thickness, high myopia, thin corneal pachymetry, thick classic flap, corneal topographical irregularity, PTA more than 40%, young age, and pregnancy. And there are three scoring systems which describe at risk of ectasia: the ERSS by Rendelman, the percentage tissue ablation by Santiago, and the score analyzer in OpScan. Now, it is important to note that the Rendelman risk assessment was based on the Placido disc, so the posterior elevation was not taken into consideration. And although, according to Rendelman, the sensitivity is 91% and specificity is 96%, but in another study by Shan et al., it was shown that the specificity is low, it is to the tune of 56%. Likewise, PTA more than 40% is a risk factor for ectasia in normal topography, and however, most patients, when it was described, had undergone a microkeratome LASIK, and so the flap thickness was 140 microns, and no weightage was given for individual parameters such as CCT or the ablation depth. Now, in a subsequent paper by Santiago, he wanted to look at what gives more contribution to ectasia, whether it is flap thickness or it is ablation depth. It was found that flap thickness is more significant, and thick flaps were insufficient to cause ectasia in eyes with normal topography unless they are accompanied by higher ablation depths and high PTA. And so PTA more than 40% need not cause ectasia. Again, PTA more than 40% is a risk factor in suspicious topography. This again was proven in a subsequent paper by Dr. Santiago. And if we look at this paper again, this looked at the PTA, and they said that there were patients with PTA more than 40% who did not develop ectasia over a 2 year period. And again, this looked at all the three systems, including the score system, uh, study done by Cordelia Chan, and score value of more than equal to zero was the most predictive of ectasia and achieved the highest specificity. And in eyes with normal topography, use of combination of three system yields a greater sensitivity, but it is at the expense of specificity. So all the three scoring systems do have some or the other limitation. And again, in this, which is the latest paper, which looked at femtosecond laser assisted LASIK as opposed to microkeratome LASIK in the previous studies, only 4 patients they developed post LASIK ectasia with abnormal form first keratoconus. Now, this also said that the posterior elevation after surgery, though the change is minimal in most cases, but it makes it difficult to diagnose post LASIK ectasia solely on the basis of the posterior elevation. If you look at the post-LASIK ectasia versus the primary corneal ectasia, the difference is that the topographic corneal steepening or torosity will be more than 1.5 diopters, and it is paracentral in keratoconus and mid-peripheral in post-LASIK ectasia. Then the Kmax value, which is 47.2, may not be there for post-LASIK ectasia because obviously these eyes have flatter corneas. Now, the management modalities are for halting the progression and for visual rehabilitation. So you can give glasses, you can give RGP contact lenses, Alternatively, minimally invasive procedures are cross-linking and intracorneal ring segments with or without cross-linking. And of course, when it is extreme, then we may have to do a corneal transplantation. This was a meta-analysis which looked at cross-linking for post-LASIK ectasia, where the UDVA remained stable with significant improvement in the CDVA, and topographic parameters, they showed less positive response to collagen cross-linking compared with the keratoconic corneas, and stabilization of the corneal thickness was observed in all the studies with a maximum follow-up of 42 months. The intracorneal ring segments are indicated whenever there is loss of the CDVA after the development of ectasia, and both single segment and double segment have been used. And this essentially, you have to give the data to the manufacturer, and they plan whether you have to use a single segment or a double segment. So these are the options which are available when you're using the intracorneal ring segments. Most studies use intracorneal ring segments followed by CXL 1 month later, and some, like at our center, you also use simultaneous ICRS with collagen cross-linking. And this is just to show the case 1, where the D value of 4.9 is seen in the right eye with the post-LASIK ectasia in the left eye, 3.57. The refractive error was minimal. It was -2, -2.5. And so sometimes you cannot predict which of these cases is going to have ectasia. So we planned collagen cross-linking in this case. And this is the follow-up at 1 month post CXL, then 3 months and 12 months, and the topography has remained almost the same and has not progressed beyond 1 year. And this is another case in which there was correction of -5 diopter sphere, and the patient had good visual acuity for 4 years, but then developed ectasia more in the left eye as compared to the right eye, and we plan to do intacs with collagen cross-linking. And in this double ring intacs was used with the LASIK flap, which was visible. And again, the D value in this case initially was 13.16. It did decrease to 10.25, and the flattening effect was also because of the presence of the intacs. So to conclude, though the scoring systems are imperfect, the incidence of post-LASIK ectasia has actually reduced to 0.03%. The characteristic pentacam findings are irregular astigmatism and central steepening. And collagen cross-linking is the treatment of choice to halt progression, although as compared to primary keratoconus, it probably doesn't work as well as in case of post-LASIK ectasia. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Very thorough talk, Dr. Namrata. I think leaves no questions to be asked. And also because we are running out of time, any questions we could keep for the end. That was a great talk.